I'll make an exception just this once. Hello fellow film lovers and moviegoers, I'm the Red Hat Reviewer. My red hat is on break for now, and today I'm going to be talking about Rogue One, the latest in the Star Wars saga of films. You know that text crawl at the beginning of episode 4? That's this movie. This is about how the Rebels and the Alliance stole the Death Star plans. Turns out it's not that the Empire was dumb and built a very obvious weakness in their Death Star, it was actually revenge. Why it is, I won't say because I want to try and make this review as spoiler-less as possible. But I'm going to put a little warning at the bottom just in case, just for safety. Maybe I'll say something that you don't want to hear, you don't want to know. But Jordan, can't you just edit out spoilers later? And to you I say, don't ask questions I don't know the answers to. Let's get on with this. So as we know from the trailers, our main character in Rogue One, Jyn Erso, is the daughter of Galen Erso, the one who's been hired to design the Death Star. But what happens is that Galen gets a little message out to the Rebel Alliance and reveals he's ooh, they're gonna get it. The Empire's gonna get it! So Jyn Erso, along with a few other scrappy outsider types, have been recruited by the Rebel Alliance to steal the Death Star plans from the Empire. That's it. Plain and simple. Now I'm gonna do a little something different than from my normal reviews. I'm gonna start with my negatives and move on to my positives. It'll make sense by the end of the review, but I don't want anyone to think that I actually didn't like this movie. I actually quite like this movie a lot. It's gonna sound like I don't like this movie, and for a few reasons. One, there's no text crawl. This is something the movie really needed. I get the idea. I get why they're doing it. I imagine the idea is that they're trying to differentiate the standalone Star Wars films from the episodic Star Wars films. Which makes sense in theory, except how every single Star Wars video game has a text crawl, all the TV show episodes have a text crawl. So why doesn't the standalone movies have a text crawl? I feel like the movie's energy just was really stunted because there was no text crawl, because you can't help but go into a Star Wars film, even the prequels, not excited. You start the text crawl. You're pumped, you're ready, you're excited. Every Star Wars film in history starts this way. I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, but I'll carry on now. I mean, the characters are cool, right? Yeah, they're very unique and they're very distinct and they're very awesome, especially K2SO and Donnie Yen's character, Kurrit. By far the best dialogue goes to K2SO, who's a reprogrammed, repurposed Imperial droid, and he's kind of a sass-ass. Is that a real thing? A sass-ass? And then we also have Chirrut, who isn't a Jedi, but he's a believer in the Force. He's a blind man. But if you've ever seen anything from Daredevil, you know that every blind man is secretly a ninja. Donnie Yen has some of the best action martial arts scenes in Star Wars that I've ever seen. Even though he never actually wields a lightsaber, it's quite awesome. You do not mess with Ip Man Kenobi. Unfortunately, there is some fault with the characters. They're not fully fleshed out and realized. So we have Chirrut and we also have his best buddy Baze, who's got this big, heavy laser rifle. Chirrut believes in the Force, Baze does not. But why? It's never explained why, it's just they do. Another character, Cassian Andor, the one who's the lead basically, other than Jyn Erso, the one who's connected with the Rebel Alliance the most, has a backstory about how he's made terrible decisions and he's made terrible sacrifices for the rebellion and it's weighing on him. But how? What's the story? We don't know the story. The story is never given to us. So the characters are still cool in the moment, in their scenes, in their choices throughout the story. Those are cool, those are interesting, but they're never given enough context to really become impactful. So the first act is kind of bumpy because we're getting introduced to these new characters, but we're never really introduced to them. We don't get to know them very well. Second act's also kind of slow. I mean, they're still kind of on track with the mission, but it's kind of like grinding. It's something else they have to get done before they can go get the plans. But, here we go. This is the moment. The third act in this film is amazing. Everything in the movie becomes so much better when the third act starts. Third act is right when they go to the planet where they know the Death Star plans are at, and they start their assault. There's an amazing space battle. There's an amazing ground assault. Everyone's got to do this thing that helps this other team do this one other thing that helps the other team do their next thing, and allows the plans to finally become transmitted, and there's so much at stake, and the third act is basically the movie you came to see. That's the A lot of my friends and a lot of people I've been seeing have been saying this puts the war in Star Wars. This is a war film. And to a point, I agree. I mean, the third act proves it. But one thing I also noticed in this movie, a lot, that's not usually in a Star Wars film, is the espionage. There's political goings-on, especially in the Empire. There's one power figure who kind of shoves another power figure out of the way. There's plotted assassinations and the likes of that. There's also a lot of handy cam, kind of like the Bourne movies a little bit, not shaky cam. You can clearly see when people are fighting and when things are blowing up, what they're doing. Just sometimes when we're on profiles of a character, the camera is a little wobbly. And it's supposed to invoke a sense of urgency and the idea that at any moment, things could get moving. Much like many spy movies of recent years. And as well as the handycam stuff, I gotta say, Rogue One has the best scale of any Star Wars films. Everything looks big. I mean, we've known things that are in Star Wars are big. The Death Star is big. The AT-ATs are big, but they have never looked bigger. Gareth Edwards, the director of this film, really likes to put the camera close to the ground and have our characters looking up. That is definitely something that carried over from when he directed Godzilla, right? So as you can see, I really like this Star Wars movie. I didn't so much at the beginning, but over the runtime, it continued to get better and better and better and better. Wrapping up, Act 3 is definitely the best. The characters did need some work on them, but they served their purposes well. The outstanding performances were definitely the action and the assault to get the Death Star plans, which is the whole reason you came to see the movie, so if anything has to work, it has to be that. I won't say I like Rogue One better than I like Force Awakens, but I also don't think I like Force Awakens more than I like Rogue One. I kind of like them both the same, for different reasons, but that's why I'm gonna give Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, 5 out of 6 thumbs up. Yes, guys, thanks for watching. If you like this review, make sure to give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos, make sure to subscribe down below. You can also follow me on Twitter at JordanTQet. And, of course, may the Force be with us. I'm one with the Force is with me. 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 Is it working?